My name is Sunshine Eckert, and this is my real story. I grew up in a farmhouse right in the country. I had two younger siblings. My parents were married at a very, very young age. So I think my mom was 18, and then she had me when she was 19, and they ended up getting divorced. I think it was like 7 or 8 years later. A lot of responsibility on me at a really young age. I just remember taking care of my little sister and changing her diapers. I remember my mom just needing a lot of help. She was doing it on her own with 3 really small kids. My dad just checking out of my life. He just, out of all of our lives, he just was never there. He just was never there. And he was in and out of jail and for child support. So pretty much it was my mom and us girls. Most of my friends all lived with 2 parents. Just that feeling that I wasn't accepted or that there was something wrong, like I wasn't good enough. And I remember we went to church for a while. My parents were Pentecostal, so when they divorced, it was a really big deal. It was just, you know, you're done. So I think my mom was probably turned off by the church at that time. There's always like, you're different. Like, why are you in our church? We didn't go to church for a while. Absent parent of my dad. I think that's such an important role. When you're going through it, you don't really know, like something really, really missing. You're trying to fill that. It plays into your identity. I try with him, but he really lets me down. He's missed so much. It's like I don't even know him. Every show choir event, every basketball game, every volleyball game, every track meet, everything. He's missed everything. But I've tried. Lord, is this a door you really want me to go through? Is this for his healing and my healing? What do you want me to do here? Remember, I had a falling out in my home later on in my high school year. Moved in with my boyfriend at the time, which was a big no-no, and it's almost like I knew I wasn't supposed to, but I did it anyways because I had felt hurt, I think. I was going to school at St. Francis. I ended up being pregnant like 4 or 5 months later. School ended for me then, because I had to work. This man ended up just beating me while I was pregnant. So the first beatings didn't start until I was like 6 or 7 months pregnant. It was such a hard time in my life at that time. Up until that point, like I was straight and narrow. I walked the line because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, or how I was going to receive love. When I was younger, I was like, I don't ever want to be divorced or have children out of wedlock, not have both parents in the same house. Just so bent on that not being my children's lives. I want this for my kids. And so I stayed, and he just kept on hurting me and hurting me. It was just awful, like, he's gonna kill me. Like, I'm gonna die. And it was so, so scary. And to think that I could have lost my daughter, sorry. I felt really, really, really trapped. Because, I had a falling out with my family. I didn't feel like there was anywhere to go. And so I stayed for like a couple more years. Like my daughter experienced some of that trauma. It's just something that it never leaves you. It just doesn't. It never, ever leaves you. I wrestle with guilt on so many, I think, levels, because I should have left her biological father right when he first did it to me. He kind of would choke me out, and it would be to a point where it's like he knew at what point he had to give me air so I wouldn't die. That was like a turning point that I had to get out. I had to find some way out. He didn't even know, and I just left. Hardly took anything and just left. That journey was hard. he was so domineering, and he controlled every movement I made. You forget what normal is. Having major trust issues, no one's ever gonna do that to me again. It's almost like I wouldn't even let anybody get that close, but yet you're still trying to find your identity in someone. Gabby's adoptive dad, I met him, and we ended up being married, like a couple years later, and he was just so good to my daughter and so good to me. Going through the marriage and us having our problems and not really knowing, why I was feeling this way. It was always about having a nice house or having things, going through the motions of going to church, falling into that sin of drinking and emptiness and drinking and making really bad decisions. And then it was like 6 months went by and then I was divorced. I just remember being really mad at God for a while. I think you have to fully surrender, and that's, it's always been hard for me to do something like that. Just with my experiences, what are you gonna do if I surrender? Are you gonna hurt me? Because the people that have been the closest to me, that were supposed to love me, have hurt me the worst. I didn't get the relational part until much later. And then I remember me being in my apartment with my daughter and just looking at this, and I just couldn't believe it. Here I am, divorced. That was the one thing I wanted for my daughter, was to just have two parents in the home. It was borderline sabotaged because of some emptiness or in sin that I was feeling, and it was just heartbreaking. This is awful. These are the choices I made. That was rock bottom for me. How did I ever get here? I remember staying away from the church for a while after that, just because I'm like, well, what is, God doesn't want me in that church. Look at this life. He does not want me there. And then I remember meeting Chad a little bit later on. At that time, I think still, in that same mindset of trying to find your identity in someone else. I remember God just made it so apparent one evening, and he brought all my sin to the surface. A good person doesn't hack it. You've lost it big time, but I still love you. I just remember that being this feeling. I still love you, And that was just really hard for me to grasp, that, my sin, he went to the cross for. He died for me. And it was just a really overwhelming. I remember asking God to forgive me and show me who he really was, and help me to surrender, because he knows I struggle with that. And from that day, I struggled with whether or not God really forgave me. And he's just always put the right people in my life. He always has. He's always just put the right people and the right church in my life. That all that sin, it's almost like I had to get to that point, or else I wouldn't have really found out why I needed him. I know that I have a purpose and that I'm living out my purpose, whereas before, I think I was trying to find my identity in people. You don't understand what it's like to be truly loved until you understand the cross. He never fails me, never fails me. And it's just when I've just said, okay, this is your life. It's not mine anymore. It's crazy. It's a crazy, crazy love.